wolf had come to an end, and with it, the dance of the dragons. Lord Cregan Stark had stepped down as Hand of the King and announced his intention to return to Winterfell. But before he could take his leave of King's Landing and of the South, he faced a thorny problem. Lord Stark had marched south with a great host, made up in large part of men unwanted and unneeded in the north, whose return home would bring great hardship and maybe even death for the loved ones they had left behind. Legend and Mushroom tell us that it was Lady Alysanne Blackwood who suggested the answer. The lands along the Trident were full of widows, she reminded Lord Stark. Women, many burdened with young children, who had sent their husbands off to war with one lord or another, only for their husbands then to fall in battle. With the winter at hand, strong backs and willing hands would be welcome in many a hearth and home. In the end, more than 1,000 Northmen accompanied Black Aly and her nephew Lord Benjicot when they returned to the Riverlands after the royal wedding. A wolf for every widow, Mushroom would jape. He will warm her bed in winter and gnaw at her bones come spring. Yet hundreds of marriages were made at so-called widows' fairs held at Raventree, Riverrun, the Stony Stepped, the Twins, and Fairmarket. Those Northmen who did not wish to marry instead swore their sword to lords, both great and small, as guards and men-at-arms. A few, sad to say, did turn to outlawry and met evil ends as a result. But for the most part, Lady Alysanne's matchmakings was a success. The resettled Northmen not only strengthened the river lords who welcomed them, particularly House Tully and House Blackwood, but also helped revive and spread the worship of the old gods south of the Neck. Other northerners chose to seek new lives and fortunes across the narrow sea. A few days after Lord Stark stepped down as the Hand of the King, Sir Marsden Waters returned alone from Lys, wherence he had been sent to hire sellswords for Aegon II. He gladly accepted a pardon for his past crimes and reported that the Triarchy had collapsed. On the point of war, the three daughters were hiring free companies as fast as they could form, at wages no one could hope to match. Many of Lord Cregan's Northmen saw this as an opportunity. Why return to a land gripped by winter to freeze or starve to death when there was gold to be had across the narrow sea? Not one but two free companies were birthed as a result. The wolf pack, commanded by Hallis Hornwood, called Mad How, and Timothy Snow, the bastard of the Flint's Fingers, and it was made up entirely of Northmen, while the Stormbreakers, financed and led by Sir Oscar Tully, included men from all over Westeros. Even as these adventurers prepared to take their leave of King's Landing, others were arriving from every point of the compass for Prince Aegon's coronation and the royal wedding. From the west came Lady Joanna Lannister, her father, Roland Westerling, Lord of the Crag. From the south, 20 Hightowers from Oldtown, led by Lord Lionel and the redoubtable Lady Samantha, his father's widow. Though forbidden to marry, their passion for one another had become common knowledge by this time, so great a scandal that the High Septon had refused to travel with them, arriving 3 days later in the company of Lord Redwyne, Costain, and Beesbury. Lady Elenda, the widow of Lord Boris Baratheon, had remained at Storm's End with their infant son, but sent her daughters Cassandra, Ellen, and Floris to represent House Baratheon. Maris, the fourth daughter, had joined the Silent Sisters. In Mushroom's account, this was done after her lady mother had her tongue removed, but that grisly detail can be safely discounted. The persistent belief that the Silent Sisters are tongueless is no more than a myth. It is piety that keeps the sisters silent, not red-hot pincers. Lady Baratheon's father, Royce Caron, Lord of Nightsong and the Marshal of the Marches, escorted the girls to the city and would remain with them as their guardians. Alan Velaryon came ashore as well, and the Manderley brothers returned once more from White Harbour with 100 knights in blue-green cloaks. Even from across the narrow sea came from Bravos and Pentos. All three of the daughters of Atlantis. From the Summer Isles appeared 3 tall black princes in feather cloaks, whose splendour was a wonder to behold. Every inn and stable in King's Landing was soon full. Outside the walls, a city of tents, pavilions arose, for those unable to find accommodation. A great deal of drinking and fornication took place, Mushroom claims, as he usually would, and a great deal of prayer and fasting and good works, reported Septon Eustace. The tavern keepers of the city waxed fat and happy for a time, as did the whores of Fleabottom and their sisters in the fine houses along the Street of Silk, though the common people complained about the noise and stink. fragile air of forced fellowship hung over King's Landing in the days leading up to the wedding, as many of the men gathered in the city's wine sinks and pot shops had stood upon opposite sides of the battlefield not a year past. If only blood can wash out blood, King's Landing was full of the unwashed, says Mushroom. There was far less fighting in the street than most had anticipated, with only 3 men killed. Maybe the lords of the realm had finally grown weary of bloodshed and war. With the dragon pit still largely in ruins, the wedding of Prince Aegon and Princess Jaehaerya was celebrated outdoors at the top of Visenya's hill, where towering grandstands were erected, so the men and women of nobility might sit in comfort and enjoy an uninterrupted view. The day was cold but sunny, Septon Eustace recalls. It was the 17th day of the 7th moon of the 131st year after Aegon's conquest, a most auspicious date. The High Septon of Old Town performed the rites himself, and a deafening roar went up from the small folk when His High Holiness declared the Prince and Princess won. Tens of thousands packed the streets cheering Aegon and Jaehaerya as they were carried in an open litter back to the Red Keep, where the prince was crowned with a circlet of yellow gold. Simple and unadorned, claimed Aegon of House Targaryen, third of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhaenyra and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms. The young king himself placed the crown upon the head of his child bride.